Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. The Swim Brief is brought to you by Jersey Wahoos. Oh, I'm pointing to the wrong side of my shirt. Jersey Wahoos, a year-round swimming club in the Middle Atlantic, LSC. We just had a meet over the weekend. Some really awesome results. I'm really proud, in particular, of some of the kids that I'm coaching day to day. And how well they did. It was a really, really, really fun weekend to be at a meet, and we finally got to have a meet outside of our home pool. My first meet with this team, training at another place, nice big facility. So shout out to GPAC, thank you for hosting that. And this week on the podcast, I've got some leftover thoughts from the meet, some concepts that I've been thinking about since the meet happened. Just to give you a preview of what's coming ahead, next Tuesday I'll probably have Ryan Wakamerka on, the new head coach of Auburn Swimming and Diving, and pretty excited to do that. Pretty excited for him that he's getting this opportunity at his alma mater, and it'll be great to talk with him a little bit about how this all came to be and what's next there at Auburn. So even as I talk about my friend Gary Taylor moving on, I'm really excited to see Ryan taking over, and really excited to talk to him about that. What I want to talk about this week is the relationship between training and performance, because I think this is, as I talk to swimmers at a meet and observe swimmers at a meet, I had this great opportunity when I wasn't coaching day to day and I was just doing Chris DeSantis coaching. I had a number of opportunities to be at a competition and not be the primary coach for the people that I was observing compete. And so this is a culmination of a lot of years being both sort of directly coaching athletes and being sort of one step removed observing coaches and athletes in a competitive environment. And there's some nuance when it comes to the relationship between training and performance that I think is pretty important to get a hold on, because that there are some assumptions that people generally make between the two that totally make sense, that they seem to be common sense, but when you actually put them into application, I don't think that they work exactly as people do. So let's just talk about the basics of training. The basic concept with any kind of training is that you show up, you do a workout. The workout should create some kind of training effect, okay? And a training effect is created when you train hard enough that you create some kind of fatigue, some kind of overload on what it is you're trying to train, such that you need some time to recover from it. If you basically if you're not training, what I'm getting at here is if you're not training hard enough to create that kind of state of fatigue, you're not going to create a training effect. So you, in essence, you could have the experience of coming and training and putting in a lot of hours and a lot of time, but if you're not training hard enough in that time to create a training effect, you're not going to see any progress, okay? You're simply just not going to feel like you're moving. Yes, overtraining is a thing. You could be training beyond your ability to recover and come back the next day. That's why it's really important to have some ways to quantify your progress that go beyond we're talking in a swimming context here, so everybody seems to measure their progress really on how fast they're performance times are. But you won't be able to measure that stuff well ahead of any competition. You should be in tune with what's happening at practice, okay? So you can see, am I training on a faster interval? Am I training at a faster pace? Am I training at a similar pace but doing it more efficiently? That kind of thing, because if you're not seeing a progression in training, you're either not training hard enough to create a training effect, or you're training into such a deficit that you can't recover in time to get to the next workout, and you could again be training really, really hard and not seeing progress, or actually seeing negative progress. And so you got to keep your eye on those things, and you got to have an open dialogue with a coach about, because it's really, really hard to measure by yourself. For depending on your experience level, right? I mean, I think that at the less experienced levels, it's the window for training hard enough is big. It's like really, really big. So, you do need to have a conversation with your coach, but you don't have you don't have to be so precise about it. So if we get into a more elite level, then you need that greater degree of precision. So the higher level you get at, the more you need to be dialed in a little bit, because the window between training hard enough and training too hard narrows a bit. And that's where coaching becomes just even more important as you sort of get to a higher and higher level. The other thing that's at play here when we talk about youth athletes, and I'm coaching kids, I coach kids, the youngest is 12 and the oldest is 18. So, kids. And through that, one of the things that influences increase in performance is what I call the genetic free ride. And I've written about this. But it's very, this makes it hard to identify whether real training effects are being created in training, because while an athlete is growing and just sort of naturally developing, they should improve regardless of whether they're creating training effects. So in essence, there's a long period in swimmers' lives, and it ends at a different point for pretty much every person. It's a little bit individual. You might see the end of this genetic free ride somewhere around age 14, 15 for girls. Boys might be 15, 16. Usually somewhere in that range, the genetic free ride ends, and that is when you will actually really be able to evaluate whether you're creating training effects, right? Because before that, you can literally have somebody who never creates a training effect, but just the sort of natural progression and development that they're going through causes them to improve on performance metrics anyway. And I think this creates a lot of it. When I look at the psychological side of this, because that is sort of more my focus area, but I'm going to get to this later. I think you have to have everything you have to have everything integrated, right? So how do I want to say this? You have people who have made that mind-body connection. They believe, they may not put it in this term, you know, you have kids, they say, they believe that they have been creating a training effect when they haven't. And then they get to the end of the genetic free ride, and they stall performance-wise. They stall because they haven't actually been creating a training effect. They're sort of continuing, you might phrase it as like continuing to do what you've always done, you know, but their perception of what it is to create a training effect is sort of stuck on the basis of that they believe they were creating training effects, that's why they were improving, when really it was this genetic free ride operating in the back. Now, when we say training effect, you know, I think everybody's mind jumps to just sort of horsepower, raw, you know, aerobic, anaerobic, muscular development, cardiovascular development. But really, I'm talking about everything here. I'm talking about swimming skills as well. I'm talking about mental skills, because everything is integrated. And when you get to the skill piece of this, you know, one of the things I observe, and I've observed many times over my own coaching career, is you're coaching somebody, you're trying to teach them a new skill, a new way to do something. Let's say maybe it's a turn or a new way of swimming their freestyle. And you've gotten them to the stage where they are doing it in the process of training. So you can see it, you can see the change in what they're doing, and they're able to repeat it. And then you go to a competition and they swim completely differently. And swimmer's frustrated, right? Because again, they've been looking back, they think, I've been working really hard on this, I don't see any benefit from that hard work. And you as a coach go, you know, why, when this swimmer sort of learned it, quote unquote, are they not able to apply it? Well, you know, one of the things at play here is that skills need to be repeated a lot until they become automatic. So when you're talking about developing a new skill, there's the ability to do it. If you sort of work through a progression, there's the ability to do it slowly and very purposely with a lot of mental concentration, right? And then over time, you can sort of get it automatic at a low level intensity. And then you take it to a higher level of intensity, and once again, there's a process of getting that to repeat. Racing is the highest level of intensity. So you may see stuff that is repeatable in the course of your training, which is not going to be quite as intense as a full-on race. And, you know, you may think like, oh, it didn't work. Swimmer may think, oh, it didn't work. When in reality, you just haven't repeated something enough for it to become automatic. And in this vein, when we get to skills, one of the things that I just also want to mention that I see a lot of, and I spend a lot of time thinking about, is it's not just a matter of addressing weaknesses or building on strengths. I think we get into a lot of debates, you know, about like, should we fix this weakness that an athlete has as coaches, or, you know, should we just sort of ignore this weakness? Because you can see examples, right? If you look at some of the highest level athletes in the sport, any decent coach can look at them and say like, oh, well, they're not great at that, right? I think like probably the number one example, especially early in his career, like a lot of people could watch Adam Peaty, who's just like, even then, crushing people in breaststroke, and say like, oh, he actually doesn't have a very good start and like pull out to start the race, right? And yet he was able to reach this world-beating level. And where I've landed with this is, it's not really a matter of whether you're going to address strengths, whether you're going to address weaknesses, you've got to be able to evaluate where's their potential for growth. And sometimes a swimmer has something that they're not very good at, and they have the potential to, if you invest a little bit of time in it, to have the potential to address it, and it will have a big payoff. Sometimes you can put a lot of effort into something that they're not very good at and get little to no benefit from working at it. So part of coaching is you've got to be able to evaluate where do they have potential for growth. And sometimes that's something that they're not very good at. Sometimes it's something that they're already really great at, in your opinion, But again, putting effort into it, them putting effort into it, you as a coach putting effort into it, leads to them having still better results. We switch to the relationship between mental and physical preparation. The thing that, and I've said this many times, but it's worth repeating, 100,000 times. First, you can't extract them from each other. All training is physical. All training is psychological as well. So, as much as I think it's worth setting aside time to talk through psychological topics, just as you set aside time for other things, really the biggest, the meat and potatoes of psychological training is and anything you're thinking of, when you think of a holistic training model for an athlete, it has to be integrated into what you're doing, right? So, yes, having a talk after practice or in the course of practice, very important. But what's most important is that the coach and the athletes have purposeful action that they can take during and after practice, in both while they're training and stuff that they do over the course of the time when they're not at training. You got to have a plan for that stuff. And I think where people run afoul here is they think of it as a separate category. They don't think of it as integrated, like, okay, now I'm doing my psychological training, and they don't think about the implications of how it might be in their day-to-day training. And to just give you like an example of it, I think that one of the benefits of the way that we train here at Wahoo's is, or one of the benefits that athletes should get when everything works to plan, is a lot of confidence from the way that they are training. But that connection is not always perceived by the athlete. The athletes don't always naturally make a connection between what they've accomplished and greater sort of confidence in. And then when I say confidence, really what I mean here is self-efficacy. That is another topic that I've talked a lot about: self-efficacy, self-esteem. Self-esteem being how you feel about yourself. Like, what do you think? Is Chris good? Right? Self-efficacy being what do you think you can do? What can Chris do? Right? So when I say confidence, I'm really meaning self-efficacy here, and you creating this belief, like, okay, I did 30 100s on the 130, and I was holding 58s on all of them, and I should be able in this distance race to stay under a minute the whole way, something like that, right? Athletes, I think, partially just because it takes a lot of concentration to just focus on the movement of your body and managing an interval and looking at a time and all that kind of stuff. They don't necessarily always, while they're breathing so hard and hanging over the lane line and stuff, think like, oh, I really should feel confident in how everything I've accomplished today. Okay, they're going to need your help with that as a coach. And then we'll sort of finally get to the final piece here, and that is, regardless of preparation, a range. This is the big thing. A range of performance outcomes are possible, and I have to give eternal credit to a friend of mine, Dirk in Switzerland, who really, through an athlete, taught me this. This was, it was like a year into coaching at Georgia Tech, and I recruited a swimmer that he coached, a guy named Nico. Not Nico who's been on this podcast, a different Nico. And this guy had set a Swiss record in the 100 butterfly long course at that time. I think it was 53.8 or something. It's come a long way since then. And one of the things Dirk said to him was, that when you did that swim, you had basically the best possible performance you could have on this day. And some of you who've listened to my podcast and read blogs and stuff, you've heard the story before. But again, it's so fundamental that I will be repeating it many, many more times. And don't take anything away from the training and the preparation, but sometimes when you train and prepare really, really well, you have your best possible performance. Sometimes you have a middle performance, and sometimes you have a bad performance for that particular day. Sometimes you go to your taper meet and you have the worst possible performances, and that doesn't mean that you were capable of, and that doesn't mean that your preparation sucked. This is really important. Because, I see this snap movement where the performance is not what the coach thought the athlete was capable of. The athlete is disappointed in the performance. And then the second guessing of everything that happened before it comes. And I think you really need to be able to identify, was the preparation actually bad? Or did the athlete have the worst possible performance in the range that they prepared for? So in Nico's sense, I was really happy that Dirk talked to him about this, because I coached him, and in his first year, he, I thought, did really, really good training. He was progressing really, really well. And it was an Olympic year. He was trying to make the Olympic team. We did a long course time trial after the ACC championships, and he went 54.5 or 54.6. Now, not as fast as he needed to go to make the team. He actually needed to swim faster than his own record. I think the time to make it was like 53.2. And so he was disappointed. And we had that moment where he sort of second-guessed everything he had done up there. And I was really grateful for Dirk, because Dirk was there saying, yeah, but it's possible that, you trained really, really well, and you just had a middle-level performance. So whereas 54.5 was maybe like the 50th percentile swim, and if he had an awful swim, he would have, gone 55.5, and if he'd had an awesome swim, he might have gone 53.5. Okay, that's where things ended up. Later in the summer, when it was too late to qualify, he ended up going 53.0, and I didn't think it was a particularly better swim than the 54.5 in terms of the preparation. It probably still was only like an 80th percentile swim. Qualified for some summer meets, ended up going 52, and then that was like a high-end performance for him. And so I think these are considerations you should always take into account when you're looking at the relationship between training and performance. I know a lot of people are coming up on a really important time. A lot of people in the club structure are trying to get some kids here at the last minute to trials. Everybody's gearing up for trials. Meets are getting bigger. So I hope you enjoyed this discussion. I certainly enjoyed going through it here on text with you. And everybody stay safe out there. And I'll be back on Thursday with Eric and Joel, talk about the news. And hopefully next Tuesday with Ryan Wakamerka. Until then, everybody have a great week.